Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming. Hopefully everybody was here for Senior Housing 101, and that's what we're going to be talking about. My name is Rick Graffagna, and I am my company is Senior Solutions, and we're going to chat for the next 45 minutes or so about Senior Housing 101. I encourage you to ask any questions that you might have. Feel free to interrupt, because if I say something you don't quite understand, if I can clarify it for you, I'm happy to do that. That's the same way for the people, FaceTime and Zoom as well. There was this group of seniors, and they went on a little excursion on a bus ride. They were going to downtown for an event, and they had left. They were on the road for several minutes when one of the patrons walked up to the front of the bus and tapped the bus driver on the shoulder and said, "Do you like peanuts?" He goes, "Yes, I really do enjoy peanuts." So she held out her hand and he grabbed a few peanuts, and he munched on them, and they were really quite tasty. And so a few minutes later, the same person approached the bus driver and tapped him on the shoulder and said, "Would you care for some more peanuts?" And he said, "Sure, it sounds great. I really appreciate it." Well, that repeated itself three more times. And finally, when the woman approached the bus driver, he goes, "I really enjoy the peanuts, but, I don't want to be eating all of your peanuts that you spent your hard-earned money on." And she goes, "Well, that's okay. They're too hard on our teeth. We can't eat them." And he goes, "Well, if they're so hard on your teeth, why would you buy peanuts?" And she said, "Well, we really enjoy the chocolate on the outside." Sorry. Next. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to start talking about, we're going to jump right into the presentation. We're going to talk about retirement communities and the various types of financial models for retirement communities. So the first one is a buy-in. Who in the room has heard of the term buy-in? Okay, want to venture a guess what you think it is? Yeah.
You give them a large sum of money in order to get into the community. And that's what gets you.
Yep, that's a pretty good overview. Okay, and so that's exactly right. So the buy-in or the entry fee, if you will, depending on the community, will be some level of a six-figure amount. That will vary from property and also to the size of apartment that you're looking to move into, whether it's the smallest one bedroom to the largest three bedroom with a den and two bathrooms. The buy-in this is not a real estate venture, so you're not getting a title to the property. As this young lady pointed out, you're gaining entry or access to this community. So what do you get for this? Maybe $200,000, maybe $300,000 amount of money that you're giving to this property. You're getting entry. You're getting access to the various levels of care, which we're going to speak to in a few minutes, but independent living, assisted living, memory care, and the like. In some cases, that access includes priority access, so that if there's availability issues, you as an internal candidate are going to take priority over someone that may be trying to move in from outside the property. In some cases, there's financial benefits to it, where there may be discounted pricing for someone that started out as a buy-in resident and now is migrating through the various levels of care. There's a safety net potentially. There's some properties that have what they call a life care plan, or there may be a benevolent fund, which essentially means that if at some point down the road you do not have the financial wherewithal to continue to pay the monthly fees to stay there, the life care plan or the benevolent fund kicks in and allows you to stay there until you elect to leave that property. Now, when you do your buy-in, you're buying a percentage plan. It might be a 90% plan, it might be an 80% plan, it might be a 55% plan. And what that essentially means is that at the time that you leave the property, either you leave under your own volition or you've lived there to the end of your life and you pass away while you're living, that percentage of that initial upfront buy-in amount is released either to you or to your estate and your beneficiaries. So if it was a $200,000 buy-in, the 90% buy-in plan $180,000 would be relinquished to you or to your estates. Questions on that? Yes, sir.
There's no, I believe it's called Homestead on 31.
Yep, Batavia, yep. That's a buying property. Yep, good example. So buy-ins can be great, but not everybody is in necessarily in the financial position to do a buy-in type of community. So the next type of property, next slide, please, is a community fee for a rental property. In this particular case, the entry fee is significantly less than what you would see in a buying community. It might be $3,000, might be $4,000, it might be 1 month's rent. You know, still certainly not a small amount of money, but much less as compared to the buying community. The rental fee in this particular case is a non-refundable fee that really kind of goes to overhead, maintenance of the property, upkeep of the apartments, things of that nature. It's rental from the standpoint that you pay a monthly fee and you may sign an agreement that looks like a regular apartment rent. You know, you sign a lease June 1st and it's good through the May 31st. In that particular case, if you want to leave earlier, the landlord's going to say, yeah, you can leave, but you still owe me my rent, right? For the duration of your term of your agreement. In senior housing, you've got a lot more flexibility. In assisted living, memory care and the like, by law in the state of Illinois, you can give a 30-day notice and you can leave that property and you no longer have any financial responsibilities. So in essence, it's really a month-to-month kind of a scenario. So if you decide to move into a community and 4 months later, for whatever reason, you decided that this isn't a good fit for you, you can give your 30-day notice and you can leave. Pardon?
Are you giving deposits to live there?
Your initial upfront community fee that I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, so that's a one-time non-refundable, but there's no successing, there's no monthly deposit after that.
One time non-refundable.
Right. Okay. Good question. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
How common,
Pardon?
how common do you see that,
The rental?
the community fee?
Yeah, so the buy of all your senior housing options out there, the smallest percentage are your buy-in types. The vast majority of what you see out there are your rental communities. The smaller. Okay, next. And then the third type of housing is what we call either low income or affordable housing. This traditionally are properties that offer rents or senior apartments that are below market rate. They could be a percentage of your income. There could be a voucher program depending on where you live to help defray the cost of the rent. Typically, these types of housing are independent with limited or not many services available as compared to the other two types. And one of the other big issues with affordable housing in our areas in particular is that there's a real shortage. You know, most of this type of housing have pretty significant waiting lists. Demand is much greater than what the supply is right now for affordable housing. Yes, ma'am.
Is that called Section 8?
Yes, that'd be another way of looking at it.
Are there any Section 8s in Naperville or Aurora?
Yes. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. I had to look it up, but yes, the short answer is yes.
I've already checked that, there is, but the waiting list is 2 and 3 years.
Yeah, very long.
That
Yeah, very long.
by then you're not homeless and living under a bridge.
Good question, though. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, let's move on.
Can I just say?
Yes.
I'm not sure of this, but possibly they'll tell you it's 2 to 3 years. Just to let you know it might take a while, but it's not always that long.
Well, you know what, that's a great, I almost made that point, that's exactly spot on. You know, I tell families that approach me and that they're looking for that as a fit, you know, the clock doesn't start ticking until you're on the list, right? And so you may require some paperwork to be filled out, but once you're on the list, that to your point, you know, once an apartment becomes available, they start going down the list and they go, well, we're not interested, we're not interested, we're not ready, we're not, now all of a sudden, instead of 2 years, maybe it's much dramatically less, you know, so to that point, you know, I always encourage families to at least get on the list of multiple properties and kind of play the waiting game, because it could be a lot faster than what you think. Thank you for bringing that up, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Like adoption or a kidney transplant.
I guess so. You're exactly right. You never know. Okay, so type of retirement housing communities. So independent living. So an independent living apartment, excuse me while I take a drink here. So an independent living apartment, you have your own apartment. Could be a studio, could be a 1 bedroom, could be 2 bedroom. They come unfurnished. You furnish it with your own belongings. Comes with a full kitchen. You have a base rent, which pays for your pays for your rent, pays for utilities, pays for housekeeping. In some cases, you can pay a little extra for laundry. The laundry facilities are available right on the same floor. In many cases, and I shouldn't say many cases, in some cases, there's a washer dryer in the apartment. Pays for Wi-Fi, utilities, pays for a meal plan. Okay, so there's food available, served restaurant style, typically 1 or 2 meals a day, depending on the building and the plan that you purchase. There's programming and activities, local transportation are all included in that base rent. Yes, ma'am.
That's section 8.
Oh, no, this is independent living in general, okay? Not specific to section 8. In fact, a lot of your section 8 buildings do not have meal plans, for example. You know, it may have a very limited, if any, kind of programming or activities that take place. Let's see what else did I want to say about independent living. So it was unfurnished, you're furnished with your own belongings, things of that nature. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a regular kitchen there where you can prepare your own food?
Absolutely, it's a full kitchen, okay? Oven, you know, stove, many cases dishwasher, full-size refrigerator. It's absolutely there to prepare meals. Yes, ma'am.
But they still charge you for meals that you don't even want.
Well, no, you part of the independent living, there are meals of it, they're part of their meal plan. So it may just be breakfast, for example, and you may be, you know, need to make dinner, or it may only be dinner and you have to prepare lunch or dinner, or lunch or breakfast.
But they have a set plan.
Yes, they have a
And
set
you
plan.
have to pay for
Correct,
their
that's
set
part,
plan.
that's built into your rent.
So if you don't want that, you still have to pay it.
Correct, correct.
That's.
And independent living also, the rent is more like a market rent.
Well, it's a market rate relative to other senior communities, correct, so they're competitive. Okay, so this is not necessarily your affordable housing, you know, your affordable housing kind of a different animal. Thank you for the question, appreciate that. So next. So independent living with services, okay? So here's an example of, you're in your independent living apartment. Who's heard the term activities of daily living, or ADLs, before? Want to get a stab at what that is?
And just being able to take care of yourself, shower.
So personal care. Yeah, exactly. So activities of daily living are things like bathing, dressing, grooming, medication reminders, shower assist, standby assist, things of that nature. Okay, so now let's say that life throws you a curveball. You slipped and fell, you injured your shoulder. You got some rehab. You're back living in your independent living apartment. But boy, trying to get dressed and undressed at the start and the end of the day became really challenging. So independent living with services means that you could stay living in your apartment, but now you may either have one of the caregivers that's available in that property, or you hire a caregiver to come in the morning, at the end of the day, get you dressed and get you undressed for a fee. Another example would be, let's say that now you become a little unsteady on your feet and you're a little uncomfortable stepping into and out of the shower. And you'd like to have something available from a safety standpoint to ensure that your shower is done successfully and that you don't slip and fall. So you can schedule to have somebody come in and provide that service for you, okay? So independent living with services can work really well to help with your personal care needs, as long as the item that you need help with can be scheduled. All right, you can schedule a shower assist, you can schedule getting dressed and undressed. Maybe you can have some mobility issues and you need some assistance to get from your apartment to some activities or to the dining room. Those are all schedulable types of events. And so as long as you can do that and the cost of the extra help doesn't become problematic as it is related to the next item we're going to talk about, you can stay in that independent living apartment. But now, if you hit the slide, now let's say the level of help that you need has risen to the point that maybe you need assisted living, okay? So let me talk to the assisted living. So assisted living apartment, in most cases, could be right in the same building that you're living in right now. It might be a floor that's devoted to assisted living. It could be a separate wing that's devoted to assisted living. An assisted living apartment could be a studio, could be a 1-bedroom, could be a 2-bedroom. The biggest difference in a studio, in an assisted living apartment from an independent living apartment is in the kitchen. It's a kitchenette in assisted living. So there's countertop and cabinets, a sink, a small refrigerator, but there's not a stove and there's not an oven, okay? And the reason that that's not there is that your base rent in assisted living includes 3 meals a day and snacks and the like. So you don't really need that full kitchen to prepare that meal that's not necessarily available for you in the independent living setting. So that base rent pays for the same things as independent living. Housekeeping, maintenance, laundry is included, utilities, local transportation, programming, activities are all included in that base rent. In assisted living, actually in your independent living, there are nurses in the building. In many cases, they're there 24/7. Nurses are there mostly to manage a medication program, to administer the medication. So in assisted living, there's 2 parts to the cost equation. There's the base rent. Then there's the cost of care. Each person that moves into assisted living is going to be assessed. There's going to be a profile, a care plan put together based off of that individual's needs. What's the totality of help that do they need with their personal care or their activity of daily living items? And different properties do it differently. Some have levels of care, some have point systems, and some are more a la carte. At the end of the day, it's how much time do their caregivers need to be with that resident to ensure they can get through the day safe. And that's going to vary from one person to the next. Your care plan could be different than your care plan. So there's two pieces to that monthly fee to live in assisted living. Let's roll back to independent living real quick and assisted living. If there's a couple that's living in the same apartment, rent isn't doubled because there's 2 people in, but there is what they call a second person fee. Okay, and in fact, it's really the cost of food. It could be $500, could be $1,000. Again, depends on the community. So if it's a couple living in assisted living, there's 3 parts of the cost equation, right? There's the rent, there's the second person fee, and then there's the cost of care. In assisted living, unlike independent living with services, it's true 24/7 care. Most properties have pull cords in the apartment Residents have their life alert buttons or pendants, so that if at any time, 24/7, 7 days a week, whether you're in your apartment or some other part of the community or the property, you push that button and someone's gonna come and find you. Even if you want them to bring your tribute, okay? You can push the button, that's a joke. So, so again, the subtle but important difference between independent living services and assisted living is really the 24/7 nature of the help without. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Let's say independent living is $500, cost go up as you go to assisted living.
Yeah, so it's the base price. So if you're in the same building and you move from a 1-bedroom apartment in independent living to a 1-bedroom apartment that's in assisted living, the cost of that assisted living rent will be higher than the cost of the independent living, primarily because there's caregivers available, there's a lot more oversight and support for the residents in assisted living than you find in independent living. And by the way, just so you know, when you live in independent living and even in assisted living, you can have a car, you can kind of come and go as you please. It's your home, okay? You can kind of, as long as it's safe for you to be coming and going, that's certainly acceptable. Sure, you had a question?
Yes, what is Constitution House on the west side of Chicago or Aurora?
I believe that's,
I thought it would be an independent living, but there's not a meal plan.
yeah, so that would be the independent living under the affordable housing umbrella, I think. I'd have to verify that.
It is, because
Yeah.
my brother says it.
Okay.
What price did you say?
Constitution House.
Constitution. I've heard of it, I just not, if I tried to be specifically familiar with every property out there, my head would just explode. So I try to know a little bit about a lot. Good questions, I appreciate that. Okay, next. So memory care. So memory care is unique offering under the umbrella of senior housing, okay? So memory care offering are for those that are challenged cognitively, have been diagnosed with dementia. Could be Alzheimer's, could be Lewy body, could be frontal lobe. There's quite a number of types of dementia, which each have their own potential unique behaviors associated with it. Memory care properties can either be standalone senior housing options, and that's all that they do. That's what their specialty is. There could also be memory care wings or options within your independent living, assisted living building. It could be a separate building on that campus. It could be a separate floor that's been designated for memory care. It could be a wing of a building that's been designated as memory care. So in the memory care world, some differences to the other types of apartments. The vast majority of apartment styles in memory care are studios, okay? Mostly because the residents don't spend a lot of time in the apartment. They spend a lot of time outside with the rest of the group, with the caregivers, participating in activities and programming. The employees in the memory care areas have been specially trained to work with cognitive deficits. They know how to deal and work with people that may be exhibiting behaviors, to try to de-escalate a situation. In some cases, they're unfurnished, but there are memory care properties that come with furnishings, so you don't necessarily have to rely on furnishing it yourself with your own furniture. What else do I want to say about memory care? So another big difference with memory care is that they're secured. Okay, it's not a terribly obvious situation, but the doors are secured and locked so that people can't enter, and more importantly, people can't leave without somebody knowing about it. So unfortunately, some of the side effects of someone with dementia might be that they're exit seeking, and that they try to leave to go find a loved one that perhaps died 40 years ago, right? So that's just a, really sad kind of a situation, but the reality of the work. The programming and the activities in memory care have been specially designed to work with people that are having these issues, so that they want the residents in memory care setting to feel like they're able to participate, whether it's from a physical standpoint or emotional standpoint or intellectual stimulation. So those programming and activities will be different than what you see in independent living or assisted living. Now, a lot of times I'll get questions from the adult children that say, well, gee, we just left mom's doctor and she's been diagnosed with early onset dementia. So we really need to find a memory care setting for her. Not necessarily. Okay, there are many people that have an early level of dementia that can live very successfully in assisted living. You don't necessarily have to go to memory care. It's not until it becomes more advanced. Obviously, if all of a sudden there's some exit seeking or wandering taking place, that's kind of a deal breaker, that you really need to be in that secured environment. But just having that initial diagnosis doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be in memory. Questions? Okay, move on. So, who's heard the term continuing care retirement community, CCRC? Okay, so good for you. Did you go to school before you came here just to get educated on stuff? There you go. There you go. So CCRC is associated with the buy-in type of financial model that we spoke to on the first page. So somebody mentioned the homestead, right? So the homestead is a CCRC. You mentioned Bill of St. Benedict earlier. So the Bill of St. Benedict is a type of CCRC as well. All right. So CCRCs, remember I talked to you about that buy-in, helping you gain access to the other levels of care. Well, your traditional CCRCs have independent living, assisted living, memory care, and in a lot of cases, skilled nursing, all on the same campus. So when I was talking about transitioning from one level of care to the next, that's really what, bless you, sir, that's really what I was speaking to. Next. Who's heard of supportive living? So supportive living is unique to the state of Illinois. Probably of the things that they've done in the last 15 or 20 years in the state, it's a really good idea, okay? So supportive living is senior housing. It's for people that are 65 years or older. You have your own apartment, comes unfurnished, could be a studio, could be a one bedroom. There's a base rent that gets you all the things we talked about before. It comes with a kitchenette, 3 meals a day, housekeeping, maintenance, laundry, activities, local transportation, so on and so forth.
A long waiting list?
No, not particularly, okay? If any.
What's the difference?
So I'm let me finish and now I might answer your question. So supportive living, that base rent gets you what I just described. It also gets you care. The care in supportive living is kind of similar to independent living with services. As long as the care and help that's needed can be scheduled, you could be appropriate to live in supportive living. In supportive living, there's some minimal mobility needs that are required. You need to be able to stand up on your own from a chair or a bed. You need to be able to pivot 360. Essentially, you need to be able to get up, get to a walker or to a wheelchair. And as long as you can navigate your apartment, in effect, to get to the restroom to take care of your toileting needs, then you're going to be appropriate to stay in supportive living. Because supportive living operates with a license that's one level lower than assisted living. So it's not true 24/7 care. Care is there, but it's not like you can push the button or pull the cord any time of the day and someone's gonna be able to come and help. So that's one distinction from the other levels of care and types of housing we've spoken to. The other massive difference of supportive living is that all these other levels of care, before we get to supportive living, are private pay only. Okay? You know, we're talking a little bit later about where that money can come from, but it's private pay only. Supportive living, if at some point you don't have the ability to pay privately, you can apply for Medicaid, transition to Medicaid, and you can stay there living. Did that answer your question, ma'am?
Yes, yeah, I think, maybe I'll make that clear.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I really don't need that much assistance.
Right. Yeah. I spoke with a family this morning, okay, and they called and the dad's income is about $2,500. He described what his needs are, as about, it's about $70,000 in the bank, which seems like a lot of money, but not when you're 81 and moving into senior housing, the money's gonna go pretty quickly. You know, and so in their particular case, supportive living could be the right answer for them. It's not the right answer for everybody, but it's the right answer for a lot of people. Any questions?
Did you mean 360-degree turn?
Yeah, you have to be able to pivot, turn around.
That's not just a pivot, that's an entire pirouette.
Yeah. But you need to be, well, I'm at the answer, you know, so. Essentially, you need to be able to navigate your apartment, you know, because what happens is in a lot of cases, that 24/7 need is centered on toileting needs, right? Being able to get to the restroom, something, and you can't schedule that necessarily.
I have a question.
Yes.
What's the probability of supportive living? My mother cannot make that complete turnaround you just did, but
Yeah.
she can get up and so forth. But she has 7 children. We're there all the time.
Right.
So we were told that for supportive living, the hard part for her was that because we never leave her alone.
Okay. And she's okay with you guys bothering that kind of?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Grandkids come through.
There you
every
go.
day.
There you go.
So she's never alone, but they wouldn't let her go into supportive living because there are times when she needs assistance to get up because she's getting a little apartment.
I'm sorry to hear that. You know, ultimately, so I'm painting with a pretty wide paintbrush here. Okay, and so ultimately, before you can move into supportive living or assisted living, there's going to be an assessment done of the individual to determine, because even when I hear the story, families explaining to me what the situation is, I can kind of give them an idea, but until that property puts eyes on prospective resident, it's ultimately a their decision.
Right, because I tried that supportive living and they would not allow her in because she wasn't, as you just stated, able to make that turn, get up by herself, maneuver by herself 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
And the fact that we were in there 24/7.
Right. Yeah. Sorry.
No, I'm just,
Yeah.
and so I'm looking, that's why I came
Yeah.
to figure out what other options we had.
Well, hopefully we'll touch on it. If not, we can follow up.
I can tell you right now, all those other 6, my dad went through, and he went through his money quickly.
Yeah. Well, I sometimes get asked to find the real non-expensive senior housing options. And my answer is, there aren't any. There are some that are relatively less expensive, but there are none that are inexpensive. Next slide, please. So kind of touched on affordable housing already. Mostly, there's lots of different varieties, but mostly they're independent, maybe some support services available, but mostly they're independent apartments below market rate. Again, could be a great option for for someone that is in that particular set of circumstances. Next. And then last, skilled nursing for rehab or for short term. So people go to to skilled nursing for a couple of reasons, mostly. One would be short-term rehab, you slip and fall, you break your hip, you have some surgery, in the hospital for a few days. You go to a skilled nursing facility, short-term for some rehabilitation. How many days of rehab are you eligible for under Medicare? Anybody know?
20 to 21.
Well, there are two buckets. You have 20 days where Medicare will pay 100%. Then you have 80 days where Medicare will pay 80% and your supplemental insurance will pay for the remaining. So how many average days do you think now people actually get to use of their Medicare days for rehab? When I first got into this industry about 11 years ago, I would say the average was about 40 or 45 days. The average now is about 15. Okay, so you know the 100 days are out there. If I hear somebody that's used up their 100 days, I know that it was a very complex situation because the vast majority is much less. Long term, there are some cases where someone has actually moved into skilled nursing on a long-term basis, and that's become their new home. Couple reasons how that happens. Potentially, their needs that they have, their physical needs, are higher than what assisted living can offer. Assisted living is fabulous. They've actually expanded what they can actually provide help for. So short of some things like assisted living can do just about anything except for things like a level 3 or 4 wound, bariatric in terms of 2+ person assist, on a ventilator, on a respirator, on a feeding tube, IV antibiotics. Outside of those reasons, assisted living in many cases can be the end of life solution for families, up to and including bringing hospice into your assisted living apartments. So if somebody's dealing with needing an IV antibiotics for an infection that they're dealing with, or they've developed a high level wound, and it's not going away, then they need to be in skilled nursing, and that becomes their home. The other reason that people may end up in skilled nursing is they may have assisted living level personal care needs, but they no longer have the financial means to pay privately for assisted living. So they've applied for Medicaid and they found a skilled nursing property that accepts Medicaid and they moved there and that's their new home. Yes, sir.
Do they have to sometimes move 200 miles away
To find a skilled nursing? No. No, there's options in our area. Sometimes you have to hunt a little bit to find them, but there are. You don't have to move a long distance. Any other questions? Okay, move on. You know what? You can chew it up a lot of time. We'll get rocking here. So, key items to consider for senior housing. Location is really important, right? You want to either be near where you lived for the last 40, 50 years, or you want to live near family. You want to live near the church, and where you used to house, where you sat for many years. So location is very important. We are blessed right now with the great development of building of senior housing properties over the last 7 years or so, that you're going to be in much better position today to be able to move closer to where you want to be versus 10 years ago when there weren't nearly as many communities and options as there are today. Next slide.
You're talking about in this area?
Yes. Yeah. All the way through, all around northern Illinois. Okay. So level of care, that's important, right? What kind of service, you can maybe find a small number of independent only buildings, or you can find a building that offers independent living and assisted living. But let's say there's a history of dementia in the family. Let's say mom's already showing some signs of some early onset. You may not want to move into a building that only offers independent living and assisted living. You may want to move into a building that has memory care and hope to goodness that you don't have to use it. But if you do, then they're already under the same general umbrella where you're at. You don't have to physically relocate and find another property. Next. lifestyle and amenities. You know, moving to senior housing, you're moving to continue your life, to continue living. So what do they do for fun? What's their activities? You know, small number of properties and swimming pools. Do you like to exercise? Do they have a nice exercise gym that's available to you? I didn't mention this earlier, but if you would ever need therapy services, all of these options have licensed therapy agencies in the building. So you can continue to get PT and OT and speech therapy right there. So you want to look to see what they do for fun. Where do they go for excursions and activities, things of that nature.
Because of COVID, they're not going anywhere.
No, actually, that's changed. We're gonna talk about that, but we're way closer to north than where you were before than.
Because
In the
I
last 2
asked,
years.
my husband's in assisted living
Yeah.
in Sunrise in Naperville.
Yeah.
They haven't used that bus.
Well, they're unique because there are a lot of buildings that are using it.
Can't find out who's supposed to be driving.
Well, you know, sometimes it's lack of drivers that could be doing it too. Next, please. Oh, cost. So the cost obviously is important, right? And I always encourage families to not only understand what the cost is today, and maybe you're moving into independent living, you know, but get your handle on what the prices are for assisted living. So at least from a budgetary standpoint, you've got some idea where that pricing may go. In terms of inflation, you know, over my 10+ years of doing this, the average annual increase on your base rent has been about 3 to 4%. I have to tell you, this year it's been higher, you know, and that over time that'll level off. You know, so over a long period of time, it's been about 3 to 4%.
Every year, you mean?
Yes,
Compounded.
on the rents,
Compounded.
Yeah. Next, food. Who likes to eat? So I enjoy eating. I have to tell you, I don't know what anybody else's experience are. My experience is that generally speaking, the food in senior housing is really good. Okay, it's 90+% made from scratch. The menus change quite a bit. We've got a stable of items that you can always rely on if the entree of the day or the special of the day isn't something that you care for. But generally speaking, it's good. Next. I kind of touched about this already, activities, outing. Local transportation can be important, right? Perhaps maybe you don't live quite really close to the property. You know, what do they do for medical appointments? You know, do they provide transportation for that?
No.
What do they do for fun? What do they do for shopping? You know, it's Tuesday Target Day. Do they go to Walmart on Thursdays?
No.
You know, do they go to movies periodically or else to restaurants? Next. So staff and staff types. Don't be afraid to ask a question of a couple of questions. A, are all your caregivers employees? Or do you have to rely on staffing agencies to supplement? How long has the key members of the staff been here? How long has the executive director been in place? I know of a couple of properties in our general area where the executive director has been in place for 20 years. That's almost unheard of. So that's quite a culture that they developed in that building. You know, in this industry in particular, there's always been a healthy amount of turnover. Okay, and so I think it's fair that you should have an understanding of how long that key team is that's going to be having oversight and providing the care for your loved one has been in place. Next. When you go visit a property, keep your eyes and ears open. As soon as you pull in that parking lot, the tour starts. What do the grounds look like? What does the building look like? Is it well maintained? You know, when the weather's nice, what's the landscape look like? When the weather's bad, you know, is it well shoveled? Is the ice up off the ground? Is it safe? Has it been painted recently? What's the carpeting look like in the building? But you know, it's going to be either you or your loved one's new home. You know, so what kind of pride have they shown, you know, to maintain that building? Next. Oh, how did the food get in there again? Yeah, I like my food. Security and safety. You know, what's the access to the building look like? Okay, can you come and go as you please? What are the hours of the concierge up front? Can you get into the building? You know, let's say the hours are 8 to 8 for coverage up front. If you bring mom back at 9 o'clock, you know, how do you usually get into the building? What do they do for fire drills and safety things, you know, in terms of preparation, in terms of a catastrophic event. Next. Future needs addressed, you know, to the degree that you can, you know, for none of us, we don't know what's around the corner, right? You know, but if you can kind of, you know, put your look down the road hat on, try to understand, you know, can that property or community provide the help that you need down the road? Next. So when is it, a lot of times seniors, you know, the adult kids will ask me, go ahead, next slide. When's it the right time to move? No right answer to this. You can just put all these slides up. So personal family decision, a lot of times it's geography. You know, mom and dad moved to Florida 20 years ago. Now life's changed. We need to bring them back north where there's a stronger safety net available for them. Costs, you know, sometimes, you know, providing the in-home care can be kind of cost prohibitive relative to the senior housing option. Safety is, you know, I tell adult kids all the time, you know, if you're waking up in the middle of the night, wondering whether dad was able to get from the bedroom to the bathroom and back safely and didn't trip and fall, you know, now you know that, you know, safety is becoming a key issue for you because you're worried. Next. So senior housing today, kind of back to this young lady's comment, communities are open for business. Family tours readily available. Where a year ago, it was all virtual, through Zoom. Now they're in person. Next. I haven't heard of any individual isolation. The only time there's any isolation of a resident that come down with COVID. So here's a great example, right? 6 months ago, had there been a small COVID outbreak in the building, no one would have been allowed in the building, right? Now there's a little sign at the front door and saying, hey, we have 3 live cases of COVID. Come on in if you want. It doesn't bother you.
But
So-
you can't eat with them.
No, that there are still some guidelines that prohibit, unfortunately, the dining with, but it's so much closer to the way it was before than it is right now. Good point. Next. Health is being monitored. Next. Group dining with social distancing. Activities are still taking place. I don't know if there's anything more. Yeah, and really a very high percentage of residents and staff have been fully vaccinated. And, you know, that's a caveat in it, right? We don't know what the future is. Next. Yes.
On the other side,
Yeah. Good.
people that work in these facilities, Section 8, they like to meet these people, do they have to be vaccinated?
No, that's an individual, that would be an individual company mandated that's in place. Okay, there's no CDC guidelines that stipulate that every caregiver that works in these buildings or provide services have to be vaccinated. Yes, sir.
Is there any easy way in the state of Illinois to find out if the center has been sued or how often they've been sued?
How long they've been what, sir?
Sued, lawsuits.
Oh, I don't know if there's a repository anywhere at the state level to help find that. That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I mean, you can certainly request of any building the results of their most recent state survey. You know, to get copies of that. And all these buildings are surveyed at least once or twice a year by the state. Great. Next. So private pay, in terms of going, you know, in terms of paying for senior housing. Medicaid, public aid, we talked about 2 scenarios where Medicaid comes into play. One would be supportive living. The other would be long-term care in a skilled nursing center, where Medicaid can become the primary payer. Medicare unfortunately doesn't really pay for anything related to in-home care or for senior housing. Medicare as it exists for you today continues when you're in senior housing. It's still going to pay for hospitalization, prescription drugs, therapy, rehabilitation in a skilled nursing facility. All of that just continues. Whether you're at your home that you lived for 50 years or whether you moved into an assisted living community. Medicare stays the same. Next. So how do I fund these payments? Your Social Security income. you were the beneficiary working for a company that provided a pension. Be able to set some money aside over the years for your savings and investments. Proceeds from the sale of your home. Now is the time to take advantage of those monies that you've set aside to use them for yourself, kind of from a selfish standpoint, to pay for the type of housing and security and safety that you need in order to be safe. Oh yeah, you like the last one?
Yeah.
So how many here has long-term care insurance? Very good for you. And you're about the average, maybe group this size, if I get 2 or 3. So not a lot of people have long-term care insurance. If you're young enough to think about it, now would be the time to think about it. But long-term care insurance can be used to pay for your senior housing experience. Veterans benefits, there's a very little.
What are those two, long-term care insurance and life insurance?
So long-term care insurance is a specific type of insurance policy that you purchase that can help pay for assisted living, senior housing, and the provisions from the life insurance conversion. If you bought a whole life plan and you've accumulated a cash value, you can talk to your insurance broker that there may be some convertibility plan available to convert part of that cash into a long-term care benefit. And what I just said about that is totally all that I know about. Okay, so you have to talk to your insurance agent about that. There's veterans benefits that are available if you were a veteran, you served during a time of war, you were honorably discharged. There's a veterans benefit called aid attendance that could be used to pay for senior housing. And then you chuckle at the kids, right? So I know from myself personally, my wife and I, we're on our own. Our kids aren't doing something.
They have their own problem.
Yeah, they have their own issues. Exactly. Next. So other items of importance, we talked about veterans benefits, elder law and estate planning, power of attorney and health directive. Everybody have a power of attorney in place for health care and for property. If you have one, that's great. If you have one, you haven't looked at it for 5 or 10 years, pull it out. You may want to visit with an attorney to make sure you update the language. If you don't have those documents in place, I would highly encourage you that you do that. Next. Real estate services. Sometimes you need help selling the house, right? Next. Who's got stuff at home? We all got stuff, right? Oh my God, but there's rooms in my house my wife hasn't been in for 2 years, but you know. I bring that up because it can be overwhelming if all of a sudden you need to make a move, but there are great companies out there that can help, deal with the stuff, the downsizing, help with the move management and the like. In-home care. In-home care can be a great option for families. By far, families are focused on trying to keep mom or dad at home for as long as possible, right? And so home care agencies can be a great service in helping extend that. They can provide non-medical care, bathing, dressing, grooming, light housekeeping, running errands, basic companionship. They can do a lot to help keep mom or dad at home safely. It's a private pay scenario. You can either pay on a per diem basis for a 24/7 live-in caregiver, or you can pay on an hourly basis. But there's some wonderful, wonderful agencies that I work with that can help extend that stay at home for as long as possible. Next. Adult day services, one of the big secrets that are out there. There are some wonderful options to help keep the seniors, adults busy and safe through the course of the day, especially if they're at home alone, maybe you're living with the kids. Kids are working, and adult day services can be a wonderful option to explore. Next. So how do you go about finding these communities? You can do the looking yourself, drive around, rely on family and friends. Internet search, have you heard of Google? Google. So you can Google something and try to find some options. There's some senior related websites that are out there. There's also some online senior placement companies. And then there's some local senior placement companies like the company that I own and operate, 32nd Commercial. We've been doing this for about 11 years. Our services are free. We're kind of like matchmakers. Okay, we try to understand what's going on with the situation. We connect you with the resources that make sense for you, whether it's senior housing or in-home care. Yes, ma'am.
If your services are free, where does your funding come from?
Good point. So I'm independently wealthy. I'm doing this. So my compensation comes on a referral basis. So the companies that I work with, which is really the vast majority of the options out there, so if you would come to me before and I introduced you and your husband to Sunrise, Sunrise would have compensated me for that introduction. Great question. Thank you for asking that. I love what I do. I love the problem solving. It's getting close to people, understand. People don't call me up and say that things are going great. Okay, when people call me up, part of the expression, there's some crap going on in their life, right? And so I try to be a resource to help them get from point A to point B, be in a better position after our conversation than before. But I'll schedule tours, I'll accompany families on the tours, to help them make sure all the right questions get asked. Next. So that's my name, that's my phone number. My information up here if anybody has any follow-up questions. Any questions I can answer for you? You guys have been great. You've been very, very energetic and active through the whole evening. Anyone? Yes, sir.
I haven't heard of, is there anything out there that's like seniors helping seniors? Where, let's say a senior has a home, he's independent, he's good, he just needs some help.
Yeah, so again, that might fall under that caregiver umbrella. In fact, there's a private duty care company called Seniors Helping Seniors, where it's actually senior citizens that are there, is their
They
employees.
move in together and then they.
Well, I don't know about moving in, but they can come in and help. I mean, I think you're describing like a group home.
Yeah, I'm a musician, so when I used to go out and play, I would find places to stay,
Right.
They're available, go, you rent the room, and boom, boom, boom,
Right.
you're done.
There's not a lot of that option. That's a niche, but one that hopefully over time will increase. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
It's not a question really, it's a comment.
Sure.
In a lot of cases, you're referring to children. In our particular case, my sister and I are not married, no children. Our younger cousins and things have already passed away and we're the oldest, if you will. And so the only thing I can think of that we wind up doing is, I don't know.
Well, part of it would be, what kind of support network do you have in place to, have you identified anybody to be your powers of attorney outside of yourself? So there are companies out there that you can engage with that can provide that service for you, so that if at some point you no longer have the capacity to make decisions for yourself, they can step in and do that for you. If you'd like some ideas on that, I'm happy to share that.
Thank you.
Yep. Somebody else had their, yes, ma'am?
What power of attorney, sir?
So there's two types of powers of attorney, one for healthcare and there's one for property. Two separate documents. Everybody should, in fact, if you have an 18-year-old that's going away to college, you should have a power of attorney for that young person, because they could go, because they're now legally an adult, they could go down to school, maybe have some health issues, that school may or may not be able to communicate with you what's going on. Crazy, that kind of a letter of law. There's another question. Yes,
So
sir.
when you enter into one of these models, what happens when the money runs out?
So in most cases, these properties will tell you, as long as you come and tell us when you're going to think you're going to start running out of money, like in 6 to 9 months, and they'll help you, maybe guide you to a Medicaid friendly facility. Supported living potentially, if that still works, or skilled nursing, for Medicaid.
And then if there's a spouse,
Yep.
I won't give the details, but my aunt and uncle had a situation with this brief detail. The husband needed help with spouse was healthy, and she was gonna give all of the money to, so you don't have to do that.
You don't have to do that because there's some, so the spouse that's healthy is considered a community spouse. And the spouse that needs help and perhaps needs to go to a skilled nursing facility, there are significant amounts of income and assets that can be sheltered to stay with the community spouse that Medicaid cannot come and get. You know, so I generally advise families that are in this situation to get the help of an elder law attorney to make sure that the maximum amount of money is sheltered as possible.
Is there an amount that you can roughly tell us with that?
It used to be like $180,000. I haven't looked, like, you know, but it's a healthy amount of money. Yes, ma'am.
The tours of these facilities,
Yep.
obviously.
So, a couple of things. I'm not sure they do much sprucing up as you might think. Because I've been on a lot of tours and, oh, you guys can spruce up a little bit. No, the cleanliness in these buildings is generally pretty good. And so to kind of address your concern, if you go visit a property and it's a scheduled tour, drop back in a week on another day unannounced. Okay, that'll give you an idea to, pardon?
You're not
Oh,
gonna test.
But you're gonna say, hey, I was here last week, Mary Helen here, I'd like to take another little walk around. You can get into those. You know, and the other thing that I would encourage too, I'm not sure how much they're able to do it now, but you know, invite your senior loved one to come in, you know, and perhaps participate in a game, you know, and spend some time with the residents, and she can get the real skinny on what's going on. So hello, everybody that's out in the virtual world. Any questions from them?
All I have is a comment. Thanks for this meeting. It was very helpful.
Great.
I have encouraged people to type in the chat or ask their questions, but I
Good.
don't have any others right now.
That was my mom. I had
I have a question about
Yes.
adult day services.
Yes.
Are there many of those in this area?
Well, I know there's 3 in Naperville.
Yeah, I knew about the ones in Naperville, but is there one in Aurora?
I'd have to look. I don't know off the top of my head. I'd be surprised if there was not.
Yeah, because I live there and I checked.
Have you?
And yeah, and I haven't seen anything. And the ones in Naperville, they don't do transportation to pick
Yeah,
the
most of
person
the
up.
properties
You
don't.
have to take them.
That's a typical part of the model.
Yeah, we 3 live in Aurora. And so we're kind of interested in Aurora.
Yeah, I'm not sure off the top of my head. I'd have to look. Happy to do that.
Of course, that's the second biggest city.
Right.
And even the ones in Naperville, it's a day rate. I think it was a day rate, which you had to pay, it might have been by the week. And it was relatively expensive.
Well, it wasn't, yeah, it's not cheap. I mean,
Yeah.
let's put it to you that way.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm sorry if this question is inappropriate, but my impression of some of the community nursing, there's a lot of impressions in there. Is that a false impression?
Yeah, I think that's false. I think there's way more energy and life in these buildings. This is not this is not an environment where everybody's sitting around waiting to pass away. Okay, at least that's my observation.
But the key to that is the employee.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in its current environment with employment being full, you have a lot of people who have chosen not to work in these facilities because they can go someplace else and make more money. I volunteered 2 or 3 of them in Bolingbrook,
Okay.
and I find that there's just not enough staff.
Yeah, it's a challenge, you know, and remember I said that one of the questions you could ask about, you know, how many do they rely on staffing agencies? You know, 4 years ago, when you asked that question, most properties would say no. Now, even some of the best properties that I know, I said, you know, will say, yeah, unfortunately, we have to rely.
Right.
You mean
you're-
temporary
Yeah.
agencies?
Yeah. Doesn't necessarily mean that people are bad. It
Right.
just means that they're not
Employees.
fully vested as an employee. Yeah, hey, you know what?
Non-Christmas phone.
Senior housing is not insulated from any issues that you read about the paper.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a challenging environment for everybody, but back to your question, sir, I just don't think, I wouldn't characterize it as depressing. Okay, that's, it's just, I just don't get that from my visits around. Well, you guys have been fabulous, I gotta tell you, what a great turnout. I hope you got a lot out of this. If you've got other questions, I'll hang around. You've got my phone number and my information. You know what? Even if you just want to call and just have a couple, 3 questions, I'm happy to entertain those questions for you. Okay, that's I'm just happy with that. Okay, you guys all drive safe. Okay, have a great evening.
Thank you.